So CRM in short is short for crew resource management. It's really the backbone of safe operation in any airline. It has become more and more important over the years. If you go back 30 years, it wasn't very important anywhere. It really sprung out of a couple of accidents in the late 70s and early 80s where it was obvious from the cockpit voice recorders that one crew member saw or had a hunch of what was about to happen, and the more senior crew members, the captain for example, did not know, and this wasn't communicated. And the accident investigators asked why would you see that you're about to crash but not say anything when you had the chance? There must be something wrong, there must be something we can do about this. So they started working on a couple of principles, and that has sprung into these fairly advanced crew resource management courses that every airline is running now. We in my current airline find CRM to be extremely important. We do continuous training for all our crews. We also evaluate our crews. When I, for example, or my colleagues as line training captains does line checks, CRM is an important element, and we grade our pilots on primarily 4 different markers. It's decision making, situational awareness, teamwork, and task management. So we look at how the crew is dealing with all of these factors. So if they're faced with a situation which could be potentially hard, let's say a medical emergency, for example, do they understand the problem? Do they gather information about the problem? Do they then select, talk about what options they have? Do they select an appropriate option? Do they execute that option? And do they continuously evaluate if that option that they selected was the correct one? How is their teamwork? Do they communicate with each other? And how do they communicate with each other? Are they getting on each other's nerves? And if so, why? And so on. It's very, very, very interesting to watch, especially in the simulator environment, because you can see when people are being put under stress that they will react differently depending on who they're flying with. And we're continuously trying to then talk about this in a debriefing to see, okay, so this happened, why did you not understand what he meant when he was saying that? And she was doing this, wasn't it obvious that this is what she wanted you to do, and so on. So it's very, very interesting, and it's starting to form the backbone of any safe operation in any airline or in any industry at all. In order to work together in a modern cockpit, in a modern airline, where you have a whole range up to, like in our case, more than 30 different nationalities, and also different age groups ranging from early 20s up to late 60s, well, at least up to 65. How can we get these people to all speak the same language? How can we make sure that they understand each other sufficiently to manage a safe operation? I would say that the way to do this is divided into multiple factors, but the main thing is keep a fairly low cockpit gradient. So with a cockpit gradient, I mean have a captain which is on top, which is the one that is at the top of the pyramid. Everyone knows that he's the one who's taking the decisions, but he shouldn't be so authoritative that it scares the rest of the crew members from speaking their mind. So a good captain would certainly be authoritative enough to get his commands through, but he will also be listening enough and be soft enough to encourage all of his crew members to speak their mind, and by doing that, getting the most out of his crew. So this is what we're teaching new captains. So make sure that you're not only communicating, but that you're actively listening to what people are saying. And actively listening means looking at people's body language, listening to the pitch of their voice, and making sure that if they do come with any suggestion, even a suggestion that you don't think is correct, you listen to them and you evaluate, or you appreciate their input, and you make that very clear, so that you continuously have a really open environment. And by doing that, you kind of promoting getting the most out of your crew. So crew resource management. All right. So that's one thing, making sure that you have a cockpit gradient that is sufficient, and that you have a leader that's effective. The other part of it is maintaining very robust SOPs, which stands for Standard Operating Procedures. So in an airline which is very diverse, with a lot of different experiences and a lot of different nationalities and cultures, having a robust SOP is crucial to get the work doable every day. Now, what is SOPs? SOPs is a way of doing our normal procedures. It's a way that our normal procedures are described and done, so that every crew member knows what the other crew member is supposed to do at every given point. So, for example, if I want to retract the gear after takeoff, and I am the pilot actually operating the aircraft, I will take off and I will ask my pilot monitoring for a gear up. Pilot monitoring will then check that the aircraft is climbing safely away from the ground, that all parameters looks correct. He will then respond, or she will then respond with positive rate, and she will select the gear up. All right. Every one of our aircraft will do this every single day. During the entire fleet is doing it exactly the same way. And this goes for pretty much everything we do: takeoffs, landings, instrument approaches, descent checklists, approach briefing, departure briefings. All of them have a set kind of model for how they're supposed to be done, so that both crew members knows when something is done correctly, but also crucially knows if something is missing. Okay, so then you have a good leader, a good cockpit gradient, and robust SOPs. Okay, that is how we can work together. So that is how the actual work functions. But then we're getting to the harder part, which is, what if you fly with someone you just don't like? What if the person next to you is just an asshole? How do you deal with that, especially when that asshole is your boss and you have to sit together in a tiny little office which is less than 4 square meters big for 8 hours straight? How do you deal with that? Well, this is actually a very tricky thing, and I normally take quite a lot of time talking to my trainees about how to deal with these sort of things, because it is crucial both in order to safely operate the aircraft, but also in order to survive this job, to enjoy this job. It is inevitable that you won't like every person you meet. You know that it's the same in every industry, in every job, that some people, they just don't match for whatever reason. And this is where their professionalism really kicks into place. This is what I tell everyone, that you are being paid to be a professional pilot. You probably have a picture in your mind of how a professional pilot is supposed to conduct themselves. I want you to remember that picture and try to be that picture. So even if you're flying with someone that you don't like, that is behaving badly, you try to behave at your best the entire time. Okay? It will mean that you'll have to bite your tongues at times. You might have to listen to someone complaining or whining or saying stuff that you just don't agree with. But like I tell my first officers, as a first officer, you have to act and be a little bit like a chameleon. Which is, you'll have to adapt slightly to whoever you're flying with. Because he will be your superior, and you don't want arguments ever to flare up in the cockpit. So as he is the superior. If it's something that is non-safety related, and this is like when you're talking to your boss in any job really, you will have to kind of adapt to that captain's personality, and in order to have a good day, just kind of roll with it, and then you can blow your steam off with your friends when you get back home, which everyone does. It's completely human to do. But remember that. Remember to stay professional. Also, remember to keep following your SOPs. You're being paid to do the job in a certain way. If it turns out that your colleague thinks that he's above this or she's above this and are skipping things, jumping over things, not doing it the way it's supposed to be done, you can accept this unless it has safety implications. If it has safety implications, you have to speak up. It's your job to do so. If it doesn't have safety implications, then once again, adapt to the situation. Use your common sense in order to get through it. But definitely, when it comes to you, make sure that you follow the SOPs. You do the procedures that you're supposed to do, because that tends to have a very strong effect on the other person. It's very hard to be a slacker if the other person is doing their job, because it becomes very evident that you're not doing yours. So stay following the SOPs, stay professional, bite your tongue if it's needed, and try to avoid confrontation if it's at all possible. That's if it's non-safety related. If it's, generally talking shit, having political views that you don't agree with, stuff like that. If it starts to have safety implications, if they're starting to skip briefings into complex airports that you haven't been to before, then you're going to have to start raising your voice a bit. You are going to have to question things, as in, Captain, I haven't been to this airfield before. Would you mind showing me a little bit of what I can expect, or something like that? So you're starting to facilitate them doing their job. Okay. If that doesn't work and you're not happy with the situation or what's being done, then you have to clearly express this. It can be no ambiguity when it comes to this. So if you're not happy, say so. And use those words. Captain, I am not happy with this. I don't want to do this. I don't think that this is right. I am not happy with this. That particular phrase is very effective generally. At least I found that as being when I was a first officer, because it makes people think. If they hear that someone is not happy with it and they've been attending these CRM courses that we do every year, they will know what that means, and that should stop them in their tracks and make them reevaluate the situation. And then, of course, as things get progressively worse, if they continue with doing what they might be doing, for example, pressing on with an approach that you think is unsafe or something like that, then you will have to up your voice more and more, expressing, eventually you'll have to tell them what you want them to do. So, go around, for example. That's unambiguous, it's a straight order, go around. In our company, we have built in a gate at 500 feet where the pilot monitoring has to say either land or 500 feet continue, 500 feet go around. And it's built specifically for that purpose, to have a gate where even if it's the first officer can take the decision. And the captain is supposed to, if he's being told go around, he's supposed to execute the go around immediately and then question why. Okay. So there's things like that built into our SOPs. But even if they weren't, if in your airline is not, you are being paid to be that last barrier of defense before something happens. So you have to speak up. It's really important to be assertive. Okay. Now, if you find yourself in a beginning of an argument with your captain or with your first officer, try to keep that from happening while you're airborne. So by all means, if it's something that you do need to discuss, then wait until down on stand and then tell him that you want, or her, that you want to have a discussion about this, what happened, and so on. So stay with the confrontation until you're not airborne anymore. It's also very important. Thanks for this time, and I'll be back soon.